Welcome back to Leading Edge in collaboration with Incline Labs. Now, there's a pattern I think most of us have seen. Someone finishes their first flight course, gets a taste of wingsuiting, and almost immediately the question becomes, how do I get into something bigger? Because if the internet's anything to go by, all the cool stuff seems to happen in the big suits. But that's also where a lot of people get it wrong. Because bigger suits might look like progression from the outside, but that doesn't always mean real progression is happening underneath. And in many cases, rushing into more suit just hides the weaknesses you haven't dealt with yet. So in this conversation, Fiona and I go into why bigger suits become the obsession so early, what actually matters before you upsize, and why becoming a ninja in your so-called uncool suit might be the one of the smartest things that you can do.
Hi, my name is Fiona Janssen. I work at Indoor Wingsuit in Stockholm as a flight master. I started wingsuiting in 2019, and now wingsuiting is my everyday job and my life and my hobby.
Fiona, it's great to have you back on. I can't believe I've managed to twist your arm again. We're going to talk about something which is, I suppose, quite relevant at the moment. It always seems to be the topic of conversation around should I upsize my wingsuit? It seems to be the thing that it's the keen thing. It's the key thing that everyone wants to do because, hey, look, seems like everyone's advice is why don't you just jump into a freak, right? And we kind of forget about the small suits. But what I want to try and understand from your perspective is why does the obsession with bigger suits show up so quickly after a first flight course, in your opinion?
I think it's about what people see at the drop zone and what people see, especially online these days as well. When people who don't know much about wingsuiting think about wingsuiting, I believe that they imagine a freak or something bigger. They look at wingsuit base jump videos. They look at these big flocks that they see on Instagram. And that is usually big suits. I think a lot of people are not even aware of the different suit sizes that there are. So the beginner suits are kind of looked down upon, I suppose, by people because you don't see people doing cool stuff in the small suits. I personally am of the opinion that it's way cooler to do something super advanced in a small suit than to do something very average in a big suit, but you just don't see much of that out there because most people upsize into the big suits as soon as they can.
Do you think, I mean, I know one issue we have within the UK is that majority of the events are run for bigger suits. So it's almost like you're really lucky if you can find an event that does small suits. Like, how much does that play a part into it?
I think it's a big problem. I was quite lucky when I started wingsuiting that I had some local coaches at my drop zone do more beginner events. So I did a lot of wingsuit events in my Shadow Edge when I first started, which was amazing. You don't see many of these events. I think a big problem, to be honest, is that to run an event with a high-level coach or really any paid coach in general, it's quite expensive. So you want to have a relatively big group of people that are on the event to make it financially plausible for everybody. So because most people are flying the bigger suits, it makes more sense for us coaches to be running events for people with bigger suits to get more participants. If all of these people were flying small suits, it would be easier to organize events for for smaller suit flyers as well. Also, because most people that do fly the smaller suits tend to have a lower skill level, because that is how the culture is, it's more difficult to run events because really they should be focusing on, smaller group flying, one-on-one, 2, 3, 4 ways maximum, unless they're quite advanced flyers.
I suppose we've also got the challenge of there are so many different categories of suits. I mean, like, I almost feel like beginner, intermediate, and advanced isn't enough. I do feel like we've got that sort of transitional, almost like progression based suit, which is where maybe, something like the Havoc Carve sits somewhere. Then you've got the ATCs and the Strixes, which, yes, okay, they can kind of keep up with the freak, but it's going to require a bit of effort, maybe. And then you're going to sort of the other end of the scale where you've got the sort of the Mantas and the Rays, which, are deemed as sort of acro based suits. So you can do some big stuff with, but that's going to even make it challenging in a way, unless you are a super good flyer. It's going to make it slightly more challenging for, say, a freak or especially an ATC potentially to sort of fly with these suits. So this is another challenge. Would you say that's fair?
I think it's so cool that there are so many different wingsuits out there because there are different purposes for everything, but it makes it really, really difficult to fly together. Recently, I was at an event where every single person was flying a freak from Squirrel, and it was amazing. It was easy. But most of the time, you have a massive range, and you have a massive range, as you said, within the intermediate category, for example. There's a big difference between a Havoc Carve and an ATC. That's also a problem that people don't understand when they are upsizing. A lot of people, uh, myself included, jumped from a very small suit to an ATC. That's a really big jump. So even though you're going from a beginner suit into an intermediate suit, the ATC is quite an advanced intermediate suit.
I witnessed this literally the other day at a drop zone, sort of turned up and there was a guy literally going from, I think it was a Phantom, so it wasn't even a Phantom Edge. So I'm talking about an older generation of Phantom, and literally bought himself an ATC. And he was like, I've just done one jump in. And I was like, how many jumps have you done? He's like, 40. And I was like, just maybe like slow down a tad and, let's look at that journey. Cause I know for me personally, I went through the process of, and okay, I was lucky. The tunnel was a key component to that and we'll come to that later. But I went from a Phantom Edge. I spent quite a bit of time in the Phantom Edge before I then jumped briefly into a Carve, then briefly into a Twix, which then got me into a Mako. But it was, even I feel like I rushed it a tiny bit. The tunnel almost gave me a bit of extra confidence, and I almost hadn't learned all the maneuvers. I hadn't become a ninja into the suit, which I want to come to in a little bit later. But before I do, kind of, do you think some pilots confuse visible progression with, maybe real progression?
Yeah, I mean, of course. And for most people, it turns out fine. I mean, most people will upsize into a suit, almost everybody before they're ready, and it's fine because nothing goes wrong. In a sense, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more later, flying the big suits is a lot easier when it comes to some things because the suit itself is doing all of the work for you. In a small suit, you have to control your suit. A big suit controls you. So you can actually get away with bad habits and bad body positions a lot more. However, when something goes wrong, that's when we have the problem. But for most people, nothing goes wrong. So they do upsize into a bigger suit and great, they're still able to fly in a straight line. So why wouldn't they, you know? And yeah.
Wingsuit flying is changing. We used to be in a point where it was just about going into a static flock and having like a several meter distance between each other. And okay, the tunnel has helped change that because it gives people the confidence to be able to fly closely with someone, which is ace. What's the point? Like, it's not fun flying in a straight line, is it? Right? You want to be able to have add a little bit more. When I say dynamic flying, I don't mean to your 270s, your Eagles, your flares, all those kind of things. I'm talking more the fact of movement within the yeah, to sort of add a bit more or more dynamism within the actual or within what you're doing. Now, if you go by just thinking, right, I can just chuck this on after not progressing correctly within your smaller suits, it's going to make it that much more difficult. I mean, I know again from my experience, I feel like I progressed into the Mako almost too quickly to the extent that it meant that it took me a lot longer to learn the relevant maneuvers. Would that be a fair comment?
Yes, and this is something that, I mean, it has always been my perspective, but the tunnel has absolutely proved it to me. As you know, well, everyone has to start in a small suit in the tunnel. And there's two reasons for this. It's the same reason outdoors as well. One of them being safety and one of them being skills and the most effective and efficient way to learn. In terms of safety, if you're not able to control the stability in a small suit, you will not be able to control the stability in a big suit. So if you find yourself in a flat spin, if you don't know how to handle that in a small suit, it's disaster in a big suit. So that's something you want to master for safety. But then there's also the part of it which is about the skills and learning how to fly. For example, a transition well. Um, in a small suit, as I said, you have to fly your body. You have to do the transition really, really well for it to work. In a big suit, you can kind of throw it and achieve the same thing, but only to a certain level. You'll be able to do an okay transition in a big suit, possibly easier than in a small suit, but you will not be able to learn anywhere near as quickly how to do a perfect transition in a big suit as a small suit because the feedback that you get from the suit is a bit different. You get away with a lot of stuff, and then you kind of get stuck. You halt your progression somewhere because you didn't learn how to do it properly in the right tool to begin with.
I think this is a key point actually, because sometimes people can get confused when they go to the tunnel and they see that you start off in a Havoc Carve. A Havoc Carve is
Mm.
not a first flight suit, is
No,
it?
it is not. No.
Cool. Just want to clarify that one just in case people think, you know what, I can go and throw in a calf because the beginner suit in the tunnel is a calf. That is purely down to the
The only
vibration.
reason, exactly, it's down to the shape of the geometry of the tunnel. If our tunnel could go steeper, we would fly smaller suits. But unfortunately, the tunnel is 1.6 is the steepest we can fly with the glide ratio. And the easiest suit to fly at that glide is a Havoc. So that's why we start in those. But outdoors, it is an intermediate suit. It's not a first flight course suit.
So back onto progression then. Why is suit progression not something you can base purely on jump numbers? Because I know that manufacturers will go and state and say, you know, like I don't know what it is at the moment, but I think it's like 125 jumps for a freak, and like 80 or 75 jumps for a havoc carve. Like, why should we not just base it on jump numbers?
Like anything in skydiving or in the world, you can do a lot of useless jumps and you can do also very few super dedicated jumps, and you might achieve a skill level a lot quicker doing very dedicated jumps than if you do a lot of jumps. Doing 100 solos with no idea of what kind of speed or glide you're flying, if you're actually flying stable, you will not be ready to upsize because you don't know what you don't know. Doing dedicated camps is how you learn, or doing coaching, just even doing a lot of two ways with somebody else who kind of knows what they're doing. It gives you feedback and you realize what you don't know, basically. So jump numbers it's an average measure of what the average person might be capable of doing in a suit at a certain point, but it is so different. And people's progression in the sky and in the tunnel is so different as well. What takes one person in the tunnel 1 hour to learn can take somebody else 15 hours to learn. So everybody's abilities and skills are so different.
So we shouldn't rely on tunnel time as well, because I know when you know, organizations like for example British Skydiving may have discussed the whole concept of, you know, how do we manage and govern suit upsizing, because I know that this is probably something that organizations have discussed, or national bodies have discussed, but you know, and they talk about the concept of maybe we should introduce, you know, tunnel time as well as jump numbers, but that's still not a fair assessment, right?
Well, I think the tunnel time makes a massive difference for the flying itself, but you cannot practice your exits and you cannot practice your deployments. And these are the two things that cause most of the accidents. Some accidents are related to collisions or, flat spins caused by bad transitions. Those problems go away with enough tunnel time. But the exits and deployments just takes practice outside. The only way you can practice that is jump numbers in the sky. So I think it's something that will help you a lot and will probably give you a chance to upsize quicker than somebody who hasn't flown a lot in the tunnel, but it doesn't mean that you can skip the steps of learning how to exit and how to deploy safely. It's the two most important things about a wingsuit jump, in my opinion.
I mentioned this earlier, like the key, and I say this to people, is, you know, become a ninja in your current suit before you even think about progressing to the next suit. I'm not sure if you resonate with that, but if you do, like, what's your definition of being a ninja? What does that mean to you?
Maybe that's changed a little bit in the last couple of years. But for myself, what it used to mean is to be able to fly a decent slot on the belly and a decent slot on the back, and to be able to regain stability if you've gone a little bit unstable. So that's still kind of what I go by when I recommend for people to upsize or not. I will tell people that if they're not in a massive rush, stay in that small suit as long as possible. Become a real ninja. So be able to fly really good transitions, be able to fly a barrel roll on the spot without dropping, be able to fly really steep, really flat, all this kind of stuff. But most people will not do that, and it's okay. Most people don't jump 1,000 jumps per year. They want to, progress into something bigger and to fly with their friends. So I would say solid belly flying, solid back flying, a decent transition, and being able to regain stability if you've got unstable. So be able to intentionally make yourself unstable and regain your stability. Like we do in AFF, we do a barrel roll or something like this to show that we can recover. You should be doing the same thing in your wingsuit. If you are only able to belly fly and you have never found yourself on your back, why would you put on more fabric that, if you find yourself on your back now, will spin you even faster? So yeah, you want to be mainly comfortable. And the way you get comfortable is to know that you can fly safely on the belly and the back.
And when we say, you know, fly well on your belly and your back, are we saying holding slot within a formation, or is that probably too much?
No, I think absolutely that's like completely necessary. Because now if you're upsizing and you're joining a flock and you're not able to fly a slot on your belly or your back, now you're endangering everybody else. So I think that is the absolutely key to be able to fly it well and to be able to fly it close, like within docking distance, in my opinion. Because if you're, which I see a lot of people do, you're learning how to approach a formation and you're learning how to fly your slot with more fabric. Now, if you make a mistake, you're not just going to hurt yourself, but you're going to hurt other people on the jump as well. And you do not want to be that person who takes out somebody on a wingsuit jump. It's super scary and dangerous.
Not ideal. I mean, I've heard of quite a few recently, which is not great, but and it happened way too quickly. I suppose the bigger suit amplifies it in multiple ways, which is not great. So what usually gets exposed when someone goes, into too much of a big suit too quickly?
Well, from the beginning, shit exits when people have not learned how to keep their arms closed or have never had to feel what it's like to have pressure in their arms. So instantly out the door, opening their arms and getting way too close to the tail wing, or just instantly going on their back or spinning because they haven't learned how to properly exit. Then when it comes to the approaches, people who've upsized too quickly, overshoot, go way past the formation, can't make it to the formation because they don't feel comfortable tipping it steep enough to get to the formation. Then when it comes to the slot flying, there's a lot of movement left and right because more fabric makes the suit more twitchy. So a wrong input will have more of a consequence, basically. More of a shoulder input that you weren't supposed to do will make you move more to the side. And then, of course, the openings. Lots and lots of line twists all the time. That's the cutaways.
And not just shit packing.
No, it's body position.
What, from a tunnel coach's point of view, what shows up quickly when someone lacks real control in the tunnel?
Just basic stability. I mean, it's amazing how many people who consider themselves very, very high levels flyers outside are not able to fly stably on their belly in the tunnel. And I mean, of course, I understand it's the same for absolutely everybody. It's a new environment. It's really small and there's a big mental aspect to it as well. You have people watching you, you have walls next to you. It's scary. When people get tense, they start flying really unstable. But I would say the two biggest problems that people have is that they fly very lazy with their legs, especially because in a big suit, you don't have to control your legs as much as in a small suit. The suits are generally monochamber suits. They fill with air. They do the job for you, even if you have lazy legs. So yeah, a lot of people kick their legs a lot, which causes most of the instability. And flying really, really heavily off their arms, thinking that this suit needs to be like full power all the time instead of flying the core better, which again, a small suit teaches you how to fly your core better because you have less arm wing fabric, you have less power in the arms.
What could tunnel reveal about readiness that sky flying sometimes might hide?
Something that we use as a tool to assess whether someone is kind of ready for the next stage is to be able to fly without their arms and without their legs. So this way that you're not relying on your suit basically, but you are flying your body. So we do a lot of asymmetrical flying, closing one arm, closing the legs, closing both arms, stuff like that. If you are still able to fly stable on your belly and your back, or if you can do a transition without your arms and your legs, it probably means you'll be fine with extra fabric because you're not relying on that fabric to do the job for you.
Going to sort of more the canopy side of things, because I know, there's been a big debacle around canopy downsizing. Obviously, everyone wants to fly a tiny canopy. Apart from me, I'm not going to lie about that. I'm very happy flying my 150. But
I fly a 135 and I'm
do
also
you?
very happy with it.
I'll stick with it. But is the mindset similar to what we've historically seen with canopy downsizing? People asking what's next before mastering what they already fly.
Yes, and I think with the wingsuits, it's not controlled very heavily. Canopy upsizing is controlled in some places more than others. I know in France, for example, they're very strict about canopy downsizing. Wingsuiting, a lot of drop zone owners don't know much about wingsuiting, and I have actually helped develop some charts for some drop zones back in Australia when I used to be there, to help the drop zone owners understand what is a beginner suit, what is an intermediate suit, when should you be able to fly it. But yes, people are always looking for the next thing rather than learning to fly properly.
And that's really interesting what you just raised there, because what were the metrics that you used to be able to guide drop zone owners? Because you're quite right, drop zone owners and chief instructors in most cases, they see wingsuits as a pain. They don't understand it 'cause they've never done it, which I get. And we gotta help ourselves. We need to change that, and we are slowly changing it, which is kind of a positive. But how did you give them the guidance to sort of say, "This is when this person will be ready to fly this suit"?
I mean, that really has to come from somebody who has recently flown with someone and assessed their level. You can't really rely on somebody's own assessment because a lot of people tend to overestimate their skills. Some people underestimate their skills, great, but you really need to take that advice from someone experienced, a coach or an experienced wingsuiter who has recently jumped with someone newer to make that decision, I think.
How much of this do you think is a challenge over the fact that there isn't really much of a progression system? I mean, one thing that I've really loved about the tunnel system, and actually we're building our own curriculum. Part of the leading edge is we want to try and roll something out, which is almost like a bit of guidance. It's not a rule that you thick and fast. This is what you should do. But how much do you think the fact that people jump into big suits is down to the fact that they just don't know what to do in the small suit? You know, it's not knowing what your options are because and this is not to big the tunnel up, but, you know, for me, like, I didn't know. Like, I just thought that Google Mapping was the way to go and maybe joining a flock. But when you go to the tunnel, you suddenly get your eyes opened up over what's possible and what you can do, which you can then take to the sky and do some cool stuff. So what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that is a big problem for sure, and people possibly think that certain things they can only do in the bigger suits, because they've only seen people do these things in the bigger suits. Like taking XRW as an example, there are people who can do really amazing XRW jumps in a havoc carve, but most people think it's not possible because all they see is people flying big, massive suits. So yeah, I think there's something missing there. But I don't have a solution at the moment of how to fix that because I don't think that we should bring in like checkpoints of things that people have to prove to a coach. I don't think that people should have to pay for coaching with some expensive coach to prove that they can do something to then upsize into the next suit, because that's just more money. That's more checkpoints that will make people leave the sport. And I think we're trying to keep people in this sport. We're trying to keep people in wingsuiting. So that's not the solution. But perhaps that should come from the manufacturers. I don't know. More advertisement from the manufacturers when they are selling their new suits or advertising their new suits, listing what your skills should be before you fly in your suit, rather than just jump numbers. Possibly, advertising, hey, you should be able to do a transition. You should be able to do this. Maybe that's the way to go.
It's gonna be really interesting to see what we do with ours because, like I say, we're creating guidance. It's not policing it. It's literally just to say, "Here are some ideas of what you should be able to do before you consider it." Like, if you don't wanna follow it, no, you don't have to, which I think is a sensible way. But, like, how do you help someone separate ambition from impatience?
Oh, it's very difficult, I think. And it comes down to someone's patience and someone's willingness to suck for a little bit longer to then have the long-term satisfaction. I mean, I'm definitely somebody who would rather struggle now and then have the benefits in the future, but other people want the benefits now and they struggle in the future. But when people come to me and want to upsize too soon, the good thing is that I have a lot of case studies that I can use to show them. Like I have had quite a lot of students who have really put in the work in the tunnel, but also in the sky in the small suit. And now their progression is just absolutely through the roof. When you watch other people who didn't do that, they're stuck for hundreds of jumps. And I used my own kind of case to help people as well. I was lucky, I suppose, in a way that when I first started wingsuiting, I was super broke. I had absolutely no money. So I wanted to upsize because I thought it was cool, but I couldn't. And I was spending all my money that I didn't have on jumping. So I ended up doing, I don't know, maybe close to 200 jumps in my Shadow Edge before I then bought a cheap secondhand ATC. If I had money, I would have done that much earlier. But it meant that by the time that I did finally get my ATC, I was really solid with my belly flying. My back flying was okay, but on my belly, for example, I could fly a slot within, 5 centimeters for a whole jump the whole time. So I'm really, really happy that I was kind of forced into delaying my upsizing because I think it just helped me with my progression so much.
One thing I do want to sort of cover off, because I don't know if this changes things with suit progression, is what if, I've just done my first flight course, right? And I want to be a performance flyer. I don't know why you'd want to do that because it's just super boring. But let's say I am one of those people. I'm Luke Rogers. I want to fly in a straight line because
Yeah,
it's super cool. Um, what
it
what
is
should
very cool.
the
I used to be a performance flyer.
Oh god, you've just gone down in my estimations. But anyway, we'll go past that for the moment. What if I've just passed my first flight course? My ambition is to be, the top performance flyer for wingsuiting. Um, does the progression process change? Should I be jumping into a bigger suit quicker because all I'm going to be doing is flying in a straight line?
I do think it changes to some extent, but you still can't skip the safety aspects. I mean, some people who want to fly really dynamic stuff, it might be a slightly different progression path with the suits than someone for performance, but you still need to be safe. For me, my first wingsuit performance competition was in my Shadow Edge. And then I did some in the ATC, I did some in the Freak, and then I put the Sierra Plus on eventually. So, in my opinion, do you need to be able to do perfect barrel rolls before you upsize into the next suit? No. But you still need to be able to get yourself from your belly onto your back and from your back onto your belly and know how to behave in a situation where you're flat spinning. So I would recommend to someone to, yes, perhaps upsize into a big suit quicker or with less acrobatic skills, but don't skip the ability to be able to recover when you go unstable. Because those big suits, especially the CR pluses, if something goes wrong, it's really, 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 really bad. I luckily have not, touch wood, ever been in a flat spin in my life, but I have gone for like a single barrel roll in my dive in a CR plus before, which ended up giving me a PB in my in my speed run because I induced some extra speed. But it's pretty freaky. It happens really, really quickly. And if I had, frozen or reacted badly, I probably would have gone super, super out of control. And I am not sure. I'd like to believe I can get myself out of a flat spin in a massive suit, but I don't know because I haven't been in the situation before. And I've heard stories and I've seen pictures of what people's faces look like in terms of, bloodshot eyes and stuff like that after a flat spin in a big suit. It's no joke. So yeah.
So the key takeaway I got there, guys, is put in a barrel roll as you get out the plane, and you're going to get your PB.
Yes. That is the advice here for everyone. Exactly.
I think it's super cool to have done a competition at in a small suit, and I think there are quite a number of countries that do actually have. I know in the UK we've got beginner, intermediate, and advanced or open categories. To try and make it as accessible as possible for people to get into. So actually, and it's not even always down to the suit size as well, because I think we've spoken about this previously around the XRW side. There are people that can outfly people in big suits with small suits just because they know how to fly their suit, which is insane and it's super cool. Like that, huge respect to anyone that can do that.
Flying a smaller suit confidently will give you better results than flying a big suit really timidly. If you don't feel comfortable going really, really steep, it's useless to have that extra fabric. You're just making your results worse. So, yeah, flying an ATC, for example, you can get really incredible performance results in an ATC if you really put the power onto that suit. And you will beat people in freaks and CR pluses if they're scared of their suits and not flying properly.
What are the clearest red flags that someone should stay in their current suit a little?
I think, as we said before, like the two safety things, bad exits and bad deployments, that's an instant key giveaway that you're not ready to upsize at all. And then other than that, somebody who just cannot be still in a flock. If you're moving around a lot, that's a sign that you should not be flying the suit. Or at least you should be putting in a little bit more time in a two-way before you take it into a big group. Because of course, everybody is going to be a beginner in their new suit for a little while. You're not expected to be perfect in that suit straight away, but put in the time in a safe environment first.
Let's face it, flying in a two-way sometimes is so much more fun than a big flock.
My absolute favorite. I personally, when I fly for fun, that's all I do. I don't do anything but two ways and maybe the odd three-way every now and then.
What are let's look at the other side. What are the strongest signs that someone may genuinely be ready to?
I think somebody who, looks relaxed in a suit, who can do anything and laugh about it and move on and not go out of control. Great. A big factor is feeling comfortable and not being super tense. A lot of flat spins are caused by people that are just really, really, really tense in their suit. So if there's somebody who can fly on their belly, fly on their back, smile, laugh, chuck a transition, and even if it wasn't a great transition, still be there and not stress out, have a good deployment and a good exit, I think you're ready.
Ah, chucking a backflip as well then, yeah?
Something like that. Sure. Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
So, final advice, what would you what would you give to someone who thinks bigger suits are where the real fun starts?
I would say be patient. Learn to be a ninja in your uncool suit. The people that I respect the most are the humble people who can do really, really, really cool stuff in a small suit compared to people who can do very, very average stuff in a big suit. And it will pay off. It's not that you might be delaying your total ninja status of flying a big suit in the mountains, but over time, it pays off. So just be patient, put in the work, learn to do the basics really, 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 really well in the small suit, and then move on to the bigger suits.
Well, look, Fiona, thank you so much. I think that's been some really super cool and key advice. And hopefully people are sort of going to take it away and really listen to sort of what you shared there. And like you say, it is about sort of mastering what you've currently got, like master that beginner suit,
Yeah.
because it will make you a better flyer over time. Like I've witnessed that myself. And I have been that idiot that has progressed too quickly and just got hold back multiple times
Yeah.
and learned my lesson. So yeah, thank you so much. I think it's awesome.
My absolute pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
So there we have it, guys. Bigger isn't always better in this case. Better is better. Now, a bigger suit should never be a shortcut to feeling advanced. It should be the natural next step once you've really, truly earned it. And that means more than jump numbers, more than tunnel hours, and more than just looking comfortable in a straight line. It means control, it means awareness, it means good exits, good deployments, calm flying, and the ability to actually own the suit you're already in. So if you're sitting there wondering whether it's time to upsize, maybe the better question is, have I really become a ninja in the suit I already fly? Now, a huge thanks to Fiona for sharing such honest and practical insights. And as always, this is exactly what we want Leading Edge in collaboration with Inclined Labs to be about: honest conversations that help wingsuiters progress for real.